Hi everyone, and welcome into the Rancho, and specifically to the Wall of Sound. My lifelong dream of having a showcase for all of my collectible audio equipment, all of my stereo receivers, tube tuners, tube amplifiers, and Hallmark vintage stereo receivers. It all came together with the construction of the Wall of Sound. But tonight I want to talk about, and of course those videos are all on the playlist there, building my Wall of Sound, how I constructed this with threaded rod and all the shelving. But tonight I want to discuss some pointers, and I really have three things I want to discuss in buying vintage audio equipment, both from an investment point of view and a collectability point of view. It's very important to hit these 3 points because there is a growing interest in, well, holding on to the glory days of the silver-faced vintage receivers in the 1970s and 80s, and also really a tremendously rapid growing interest in tube equipment from the all the way back to Western Electric in the 1920s and 30s, 40s, all up through the 50s with tube amplifiers and tube tuners and tube consoles. And well, people are rediscovering the warmth and the beauty of tube equipment. And it's all translating into rising prices for a lot of vintage stereo and vintage mono equipment. So I wanted to give you, I bought and sold hundreds of pieces of equipment over the years, and I just wanted to discuss some of the points that people have asked me. Rosie, how do I put a collection together? What are some of the things that I want to look for when it comes to building a vintage audio collection? As with most collections, much of it comes down to a personal preference, but those of us who have been bitten by the audio bug, well, we just love our vintage audio equipment, particularly that from the 70s and 80s, but also tube equipment from the 1950s and 60s, the early days of stereo. But what I want to discuss is those pointers, those 3 items that I think are essential if you're going to be a collector of this type of equipment. It's heavy, it has to be showcased, understand there's shipping involved, understand a lot of people don't know how to pack things. So when you purchase something on a site like eBay and there's your hard-earned dollars and something arrives in the mail 40, 50 pounds and it's in pieces and it's a disaster, well, you're going to have problems. So you want to deal with people that understand how to move and how to properly sell and ship stereo equipment. And that's not as many people out there as you think. So always be sure to talk to people and tell them, you know what, I bought this from you and I want to make sure this can sustain a drop from 5 feet. Pack it as if it has to survive a 5-foot fall, free fall, and you'll be good. The first real point I want to discuss tonight is it's important to know about telling people to properly ship. But I really want to tell you, number one is the collectability. You got to collect, if you're looking at things from an investment point of view and you want to have a collection that grows in value, which this equipment has over the years, certainly maintained its value and now it's rising, say for the fishers here that you see on the that you see in the shelf next to me. They've risen in value because they have a collectability. Why? Because they're recognized as essential milestones in the development of, say, stereo, as the Fisher 800B was. When this unit came out in I think 1962, it was really state of the art. It could combine an AM signal that was broadcast and FM signal and combine that into a separated stereo experience for you. Of course, that technology went by the wayside as multiplex technology came out, but this unit was ahead of its time because it incorporated that multiplex feature into it. So it was amazing. It's an incredible unit. It's beautiful, as you can see, with its brushed gold finish. So things have to be collectible. So in my opinion, the things like the Macintoshes, the tube Macintosh equipment, the Fishers, the Pioneers, the Sansuis, the Sonys, the Nikos, some of the Nikos, the Pioneers, some of the real high-end Kenwoods like the Model 9 GX above me. You really can't see it there. Even some Magnavoxes, some Packard Bell. When you're getting into the big stereo consoles, the Magnavoxes, the Packard Bells, even some of the RCAs and Curtis Mathises, they still command a lot of attention today because they were so well made and their sounds are so good. You want to stay away from things like the Montgomery Wards, the Airliner, Montgomery Ward's signature brand, Corvettes, or Vornado, or even lower end realistic stuff was so common. And even though a lot of it was well made, it lacks the real collector value of those names that I mentioned earlier. And you know, stuff that was made by Sears, the Silvertones, and the well, you understand what I'm saying. Those kind of units were really mainstream, and there are a lot of them still out there. And they'll never have the collectability of, say, a line of Fishers that you see across here. So you want to have something that people, audiophiles, are definitely interested in. Why are they so interested? Because they're so well made with tremendous speaker output transformers. They have state-of-the-art, the highest quality capacitors and components at the time that could go into it, right down to the beautiful solid walnut cases. And the difference between a great Fisher and an outstanding Fisher is oftentimes a $300 walnut case. And if you have an original one, boy, does it enhance the value of the Fishers, as you can see up here. So step one, make sure it's collectible. Step number two, or point number two, is condition, condition, condition. When I started out coin collecting as a kid, I made that logical connection that older must be more valuable. And only later, after collecting for a while, I realized, no, older's not necessarily more valuable. Condition, condition, condition. In other words, the higher the state of preservation of a coin, a stereo amplifier, a tube amplifier, the more value it's going to command. So you'll see a lot of listings on sites like eBay, and they'll talk about, it's a great collectible unit, but then they'll disclose, oh, it's got some scratches or some mars, or the case is smashed up, or maybe the glass, but you can fix that yourself. You can't fix that stuff, I'm telling you, okay? So one of the things that you want to demand, because it's like looking at a pretty face when you look at the front of these units, okay? You don't want to have to perform plastic surgery and all that stuff. You want these things as good as you can make them. Now, I'm not talking about simple things like knob covers like for Fishers and things, but I'm talking about scratches on the aluminum plates. Those things can't be gotten out, okay? They're not going to go away. Or if you have a Marantz unit, like back here, and they have the little hex nuts that hold it on. Some people are sloppy, and they take a socket and they turn it on it, and they score the outside of where the hex nut goes onto the panel. You know what? That marks the value down. Your highest echelon of collectors aren't going to be interested in that unit. They'll be more interested in paying up for a unit that is absolutely pristine and has a pretty face. So make sure if you're going to collect something with an eye toward the future and holding its value, the first thing that people are going to notice is not the sound that comes out of it. They're going to look at it, and it better have a wow factor to it, and it better look like it just rolled off the factory floor. Is that going to cost a little more? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. So condition, 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 condition. You know, if I had a great, like these Fishers, if I just had a great walnut case, and I just had a beautiful face panel with the glass, and I had all the letters on the front of it, and all the silk screening was good, even if the guts on it were bad, didn't have the transformers, the speaker output transformers, the power transformer, I can get that stuff. That stuff goes inside the case, but what I can't address is the outside. Get a nice looking unit, collect the very best that you can, and you will reward yourself with that. That also goes for knobs and things. You don't want dented, scratched knobs. Any kind of defects like that, don't let the seller pan it off to you. Demand the very best and be patient, okay? I want to also talk about another area, and I probably should have mentioned this above. There's also trends in collecting audio equipment. Some things are becoming pricier, like the Fishers always seem to rise in value, but another group I've noticed going up in values, well, I'll show you here in a minute. The other group I've noticed over the last couple years that's really rising is these 1970s version of the Sony, the STR models in particular. And this is an STR 7025. And the unusual feature about this is how pristine, and we've talked about this a couple times, how beautiful and pristine the faceplate is, how there's not even a hint of a scratch on it. But these Sonys are being recognized now, not because they participated in the eye candy wars of the 1970s and 80s that had to have all the bells and whistles, but because they were so demure and they were so elegant and so understated, and also because they worked so well and they've held up so well. They're really being sought out by value collectors now, and that's an area that I just wanted to particularly bring to your attention now as going up in value. That does not mean that things like Marantz's don't go up in value. There's certain what I call backbone brands like the Fishers, the Marantz's, the Pioneers, that well, the Sansuis, the upper stratosphere units there that really command the big money and really command the attention, and they always seem to be the best investments over time. Not only do you get the joy of looking at them, the beauty of them, but you also get to listen to great music coming out of them. So there's some of the other ideas for some of the collectible areas. The last thing I want to talk about is well, we talked about the trends and things, and just the fact that sometimes you got to pay up to have good things, and it's axiomatic in life that there's a reason why, say, a Mercedes-Benz costs more than a Chevy Malibu. Well, the component parts of it, the build quality, the reputation, well, just the overall construction of it is supposed to be superior. Well, you expect the same thing in audio equipment. You want the very best stuff that you can get because it's the material, it's the units that hold their value best. So expect to pay a little more for it. On the other side of the coin, I've seen people go to flea markets and just grab, well, Allied and Lafayette and these run-of-the-mill transistorized transistor units from the 1960s, the early transistorized units that are really like a dime a dozen. And they're just grabbing them at flea markets for $30, $40. And they get home and they don't even sound that great. And you could probably only sell it for about half of what you bought it for. So realize that when you go to yard sales and flea markets and things like that, although you'll hear the urban legends, oh, I picked up this Fisher unit, blah, blah, blah. Most people that had Fishers or families of people that had, say, Fisher units, they know what they have. Okay, so it's very rare. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you'd find these type of units at yard sales and garage sales and things. But most times, people are going to want to know. People are going to know what they have. I'll leave one other area too that you want to be aware of. In the 70s and 80s, they broke up. In the 90s, they broke up a lot of church organs. The Baldwins, the Hammonds, the Leslies, and things like that. All those amps were for the taking, and I probably got 24 of those tube amplifiers and things. If you can find them where people are getting rid of their organs and things, the organ itself isn't worth anything unless you are a player and desire it. But boy, those amplifiers can make very, very outstanding units, especially the Baldwins, the 6L6 tube units and all that. So other things to be aware of if you catch them, the Leslies, the Baldwins, well, those make good units. In addition, you see some of the old jukebox amplifiers, tube amps, like the Rockolas, the Wurlitzers, and things like that. Things to keep an eye out on. Things to keep an eye out for. Well, that's just a few of my hints and ideas on collecting vintage audio equipment. It really is a passion, and when the bug bites you, there's no telling how far you will go. Some units just catch your fancy. Like for me, it was the Harman Kardon twin-powered 430. I thought hum-de-dum when it first came. Oh, I could probably get that thing going, but boy, when you see it lit up in green with the face and the red powered light and the red pointer dial, it just gives you shivers up your spine to see how beautifully elegant and minimalist a unit could be, and yet how collectible it could be too. Have fun, enjoy the hobby, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, more to come, and your thumbs up are always appreciated. Thanks.